Hello, and welcome to Global Data Themes Instant Insights. At Global Data, we define a theme as something that keeps a CEO awake at night, as businesses that invest in important themes will succeed, and those that don't will fail. Hello, and welcome to Instant Insights. I'm Emma Taylor, and today I'll be talking to Director of Strategy and Innovation in Financial Markets at Global Data, Adarsh Jain, following his recent article titled Generative AI Beyond the Hype. So, Adarsh, before we start, could you maybe briefly just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do at Global Data?
Sure, Emma. My name is Adarsh Jain. I am the Director of Financial Markets and Strategy and Innovation at Global Data. Primarily, I work with a lot of our alternative data sets, which are thematically tagged to try and decode, what are the signals we are seeing, especially which relates to disruptions and how businesses should respond to them. So that's basically what I'm doing currently.
Nice. And disruptions just like Gen AI, which you talked about in your article. It's a really interesting article, and we will go into the detail of why Gen AI sort of beyond the hype means all business. But first off, on a broader level, why do you think generative AI is more substance than hype?
Right. So I think, as you mentioned, before we go into the data, just at a superficial level also, if you want to analyze the rise of generative AI, it's pretty compelling narrative, right? So first off, I think everyone knows this, but it's still worth mentioning it again. It took generative AI or Chat GPT just 2 months to secure 100 million users. And this is competing against some of the well-established social media platforms like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, which have taken significantly more time. What's also interesting is the amount of time an average user spends on platforms like ChatGPT. It's about 10 minutes, and that's coming very close to actual average user time spent on Facebook and Twitter. So in our sense, if users are allocating their time budget, of the day similar to what they spend on Facebook and Twitter, it's a pretty meaningful it's a pretty meaningful value they're extracting from the platform for them to allocate so much time to this platform. So ChatGPT platform. Even if you look at the Google Trends, some of the peak Google searches for 2017 related to Bitcoin, 2021, there was a rapid surge in metaverse searches in Google, and we are seeing a very similar trend followed by generative AI in 2023. But compared to Bitcoin and metaverse, we think the trend in generative AI will be a lot more durable and will continue long into the future. I think at a superficial level, we think it is a very compelling for users to get involved with ChatGPT, and obviously we have a lot of the signals we can speak about of why we think it'll be more hype than more substance than hype. Yeah.
So in your article, you draw on a few different sources to validate this claim of, that this is substance over hype.
Yeah.
Could you maybe talk about a few of those?
Yeah, I mean, just top of the mind, couple of them is, one is there's always a need to understand, how businesses are thinking, in relation to any theme which is up and coming, and how investors and investors or people who follow the companies, what their mindset is, and what some of these can be answered by our company filings data, and it's a very compelling chart we put out. So the number of analyst questions to company management has risen 16 times compared to just last couple of years. So clearly, investors think generative AI will be a disruptive to a company's business, and they're clearly wanting company management to articulate how they are planning for this emerging opportunity and threat they face. So we think investors raising the right questions about a theme or an emerging topic is a clear sign that they think it'll become big in the future. Also, conversely, some of the companies we have tracking from the filings documents, we see, for example, companies like NVIDIA, they have been consistently outspoken about some of these technologies in their filing documents. And I think there's reason for companies like Nvidia to talk about them as well. For example, for chat gpt uses 10,000 Nvidia GPUs in their modeling. So clearly some of the companies which have talked a lot about some of the emerging technologies like Alphabet, Nvidia have, Nvidia, for example, has tripled its share price. A lot of other companies who are ranking very high in their quoting of generative AI as a technology have the share prices have seen a rise between 1.5 to 2.5 times. So clearly, I mean, investors are rewarding companies who are talking about such technologies and at the same time asking a lot of questions to assess companies' preparedness for this emerging threat or opportunity if used right. So we think that that's one indicator. I think the second major one we are tracking, which is giving us comfort that this is more substance than hype, is how companies are building their human capital in this space, generative AI space. I think one of the reasons why understanding this is essential, and not many people talk about it, is because companies, hire people for a particular skill set if they believe it will augment their current revenue base, or develop newer streams of revenues in the future, or aid in significant cost cutting. That's why companies invest in human capital. And some of the trends we are seeing is that, especially since mid of last year, companies have accelerated their push in terms of hiring for people with capabilities in generative AI. Again, one of the key points our data is telling is that some of them believe that this will be, confined to the technology sector. We think that's a myth worth demystifying. We are seeing a lot of companies across a lot of sectors participating in adding human capital around with generative AI skill sets. And we think companies or sectors which don't participate soon enough will be at a severe disadvantage. And then some of the roles you look at, right? For example, banking sector are hiring jobs to help build financial models, financial risk models. I think those are the use cases where you need to generate a lot of synthetic data, which is which is one of the very useful, use case for generative AI. You're seeing a lot of automotive companies hire people to generate a lot of sensory data to aid in their simulation for autonomous driving. We are seeing a lot of jobs being advertised by pharma companies because generative AI helps in a faster drug discovery process and cost efficiencies. So there is no one sector which is leading this. We are seeing a lot of sectors participating in building their generative AI skill sets. We think the next generative AI arms race will be who will corner the best talents in the future. So we think those are the two signals. We'll speak out more, but I think those are the two key signals we think tell us that it's more substance than hype.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess it's so important to look at it across the different sectors, because the ways in which the different sectors will use the technology will also vary quite a lot. Yeah, that's interesting, using the hiring database that Global Data has, and the company filings. I think in your article you also talk about patents. Why do you think looking at patents is such an effective indicator of future growth?
Absolutely. I think patent, if you really think about, is one of the earliest indicator about the emergence of a technology, because before you monetize or commercialize any innovation, you'll have your academics, researchers, people in the lab, building the intellectual property first and patenting them to protect their intellectual property rights. And our own technology foresight model uses the patents data, and using that, our model was signaling that generative AI will be a emerging disruptive innovation almost 2 years back. Because I think if you look at the patent filing trends in generative AI, it's about close to 6,500 patents currently, which is a 85% compounded annual growth over the last 4 to 5 years. So, we think patents is definitely an early indicator about the emergence of a technology. And it's a non-trivial pursuit, right? People filing for patent spend a lot of time, energy, and money to file a patent, and they wouldn't do it if they didn't see the opportunity to monetize those intellectual property in the future. So we think patents are a very good indicator of what's going to come in the future. And also, as a side note, I think one of the ways in which patents data also is very helpful is our own technology foresight model has identified 25 sub-innovations within generative AI. So you get a more granular sense of what are the different innovations within generative AI. So for example, our model has identified visual question answering as one of the emerging areas within this whole banner of generative AI. And what it does is, and even if you look at the current, chat GPT style of platforms, it's more text based. So in future, not too distant future, you will find a more visual question and answering prompt based platforms, which will probably, we'll speak about this in 1.5 to 2 years time, probably in a similar podcast. But our models are currently telling us that some of these visual question answering innovations within generative AI will be talked about more in the coming 1.5 to 2 years. So in
Mm.
many ways, we think patents uncover a lot of disruptions which will happen in the future, and how they'll impact the businesses.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you not only get an idea of the sort of growth rate, but then also the specific,
Yeah,
perhaps potential applications as well.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, there are also rumblings of the beginning of a startup winter. Do you think this could impact Gen AI innovation like other technologies?
Right. Yeah, I think startup winter, that term has been around a while. I think probably past year, because the very tight macroeconomic environment has led to people tightening their purse strings. So the money which was flowing to startups a lot easily. I think 2021 was a watershed year for startup funding. Close to $700 billion of venture capital funding happened in the startup space. 2022, we saw a fall. 2023 started off really bad. I think we have seen a 65% fall in the startup funding from venture capitals in 2023 through to the till the mid-year. So even in this tough macro environment space where it's not easy to secure funding, we are seeing a complete opposite trend for those startups which are developing generative AI solutions. So, for example, even though overall startup funding is tight, startups in generative AI space have, they have seen 160% rise in the funding value terms. Or compared to the last couple of years. So clearly, investors are still willing to put their money
Mm,
in startups in anticipation of very big rewards, because even they believe generative AI is probably is more substance than hype. Just one point here on startup funding is that obviously when such technology emerges onto the scene with accelerated growth, there is potential for some fraud developing. So we are seeing some cases where we think some of the startups which are securing some of the funding, for example, Mistral.ai doesn't have any product or services to speak of, but still it is managing to secure a lot of funding. But having said that, I think we still think startup securing funding, especially generative AI startup securing funding in this tight funding environment, tells us that it's much beyond hype and has a lot of substance in it.
mm. I guess with such a new, amazing development, in some ways, I guess people think perhaps it's more risky not to invest than to
Mm,
invest. Falling behind your competitors, staying competitive,
yeah.
so important.
But having said that, I think we still think, generative AI, especially given the tight funding environment, it's not like money is easily available, but
Mm.
still people are funding them. So I think, it has good potential in the future.
Amazing. I think that's all we have time for, but thank you so much, Adarsh, for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening, and from us in Thematic Intelligence, see you next time.